Okay, first and foremost, you're gonna wonder why I made this video at all, and I just want to start off by the fact that I am fascinated by studying white people sometimes because white people don't actually have the tools to study themselves because they think they're the default, and because they're the default by all the societal standards, they don't know how to examine their own whiteness, and I find that fascinating. So I want to be very clear that this is like an anthropological study type situation happening here, and that is white people sometimes can actually experience racism, but it's from other white people. It ain't got shit to do with us. So this is an in-community conversation y'all need to be having, but you're not because you don't have the tools. And so I'm going to tell you the things that I saw as a person who has dealt with classic racism, right? That good old-fashioned Coca-Cola formula racism. As someone who has dealt with that, I'm going to tell you all the time, I clutch my pearls hearing about the dynamics between you and other white people that y'all aren't catching because y'all don't have the tools to catch it, because that's the whole point of white supremacy, is that y'all don't have the tools to see the shit that's going on, right? Okay, so let's start off here. Why did I make this video at all? Recently, I was listening to a podcast called Worlds Beyond Number. You don't need to know context for this, although do know that some people just started screaming because I started mentioning Worlds Beyond Number. There's a performer, writer on their co-host. His name is Brennan Lee Mulligan. By his name, you can probably tell he comes from an Irish descent. Now, Brennan Lee Mulligan, down for the cause. We love Brennan Lee Mulligan. He so far has been a good ally. My spider sense has never gone off. He makes it a point to use the initials BLEEM instead of just BLM because he know better. And we love to see that. We love to see the progress. We love to see the demonstration for other white folks to follow and step, okay? So in the radio play part of the show, he ends up using, as a performer, a derogatory term against Irish people. And I immediately clutched my pearls. I was like, we don't use slurs like that, sir. And then it dawned on me, right, he's Irish, he's playing the role. He can say those words the way I be saying nigga all the time, right? Okay, right? A parallel. We're starting the parallels already. Because then in the Talkback episode, he was talking about how there are other terms that are derogatory towards Irish folks that I never even thought about. Like, I'm going to say them, but that's only because I need to make this quick and clear. I do not stand for these words, okay? But paddy wagon and Murphy bed. Girl, I had never even thought where those words came from. And he was like, yeah, my dad taught me the paddy wagon one because, was it the Irish folks being arrested or the one doing the arresting? And I was like, oh, that's that racism. Oh, you ain't got the ear. That's almost that classic racism some shit. Oh, y'all weren't white people yet. When that dropped, y'all weren't white people yet. Okay. So then that reminds me of a time he was on another podcast called 99 Questions. By the title, you can tell it's a long-ass podcast because it's 99 questions, and Brennan Lee Mulligan loved to talk, and I love to talk, as you can tell, but I also like to listen. So if you do listen to the episode, go ahead and start cleaning your house because he gets into it. But in one episode, or in one of the questions, he ends up talking about the time he worked as part of a television crew, so behind the camera, and he was working with other white people, white men. We ain't got shit to do with this. But they ended up using a derogatory stereotype against him in his relationship to the mashed potatoes he was eating on set that day. And I was like, oh shit, that's that classic racism. And Brennan was immediately, because he's a good ally, he was like, well, that's not racism. And he's right. It's not classic racism. It's that new racism plus shit. Okay, all right? Because now we're going to keep going. I just recently discovered, just by accident, that there was at a certain time, the second highest group of people that were lynched in this country, obviously we know who gets number one, but the second highest number at one point, the Italians. Now, what am I talking about when I keep saying new racism plus? Because the racism still is a part of it, because racism is about the power dynamic, right? So no, it's not the classic original formula that me and the black and brown folks of all of the world have had to fucking put up with. That's something else, right? Because we can never become white. We can mask, we can hide, we can pass sometimes, but we can never fully become white. That is a bonus. If you play video games, you know you get to do all the hard stuff again, and there's different bosses and shit, but you also get new weapons and you get new strengths. You could become white with new racism plus. You just got to give up everything that's unique about your culture and your history and forget who you were as a person. I'm not going to spoil sinners, but sinners, right? Keep the plot point in mind. Remick was the one that told the group that the KKK was coming. right? Smoke assumed, he was like, well, we in KKK country, they about to show up. But it was Remick that put him on. Because Remick is, in his mind, trying to save the group, right? And I'm okay, a small spoiler, you might have to skip ahead like 15 seconds. But like, when he recites the Lord's Prayer back to Sammy, girl, I almost ran around the fucking theater. Because I was like, oh, Ryan Coogler is coming to play ball. Because he said they stole my father's land with these words. I was like, oh, it's that new racism plus shit. Oh, okay, we're getting into it. Okay, so that was a spoiler. We're done talking about that spoiler. Point being, right? I look at, like, a lot of times when I take a survey, I take surveys of my friend groups, people I'm in community with, who keeps popping up? Irish folks, Italian folks, Greek folks. Now, the folks that have done some introspective work and maybe miss their culture a little bit and what they were cut off from. We now have a talking point. We can relate on some shit. You see what I'm saying? Now, I want to be very clear. Just because you experience new racism plus is not the same as that classic formula racism. I can't be clearer about that. I know you bitches is going to take that out of context because that's what you do. But I'm going to do my due diligence and let you know that that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that y'all don't have the tools to see the racism that's happening around you. And you're like, well, it's not the classic racism formula, so it must not be racism. And that's why I'm giving you the term new racism plus. Now, I'm sure there's a real term out there, but that's the term we're using, right? Okay. I'm trying to think of two other examples. There's a video essayist I follow on YouTube. His handle is Super Eyepatch Wolf. He is from Ireland, just born, raised, lives in Ireland. So he was talking about his first time being in America, doing Comic-Cons and panels and shit. And one time, somebody, a white person, behind the curtain was like, don't get too drunk tonight. And he was like, oh, that's not racist. Because Super Eyepatch was John. John is a good person. John knows they shit. And they trying not to, so they didn't see the racism of it. But I'm telling you, that's got that classic racism formula sprinkled in it. That's why you disconnected from your culture right now, because they thought you was gonna start drinking. God damn. Okay, and then this is the last example I'll use, because like this is the one that set me on this journey. I was in 6th grade. I'm sitting at the lunch table. I have my group of friends. There's a group of guys down at the end of the lunch table. They're really into cartoons. I'm into cartoons. We start talking about cartoons. They watch South Park. I don't watch South Park. I watched an episode of South Park the next time so I could talk to this group of guys, right? Okay, the episode I watched for some fucking reason was the episode where Cartman gets revenge against this redheaded kid. If you know, you know. So it was the craziest fucking episode for me to start watching the show on, right? So I am excited to talk to my friend group because I'm like, that was some crazy ass shit. The new friend group, that's some crazy ass shit. I ain't never seen some shit like that. And so we're going back and forth about the different moments and how crazy that episode was. And then at one point I said, yeah, wasn't it wild that he said that redheaded people don't have souls? I kid you not. There was a white boy at that table who looked me dead. First off, I'm at a table full of white people because I go to a school that's integrated, and you got to know the language. You got to be able to speak the language where you go. Okay. So I'm at this table full of white guys. There was a white boy at this table. He looked me dead in my fucking eyes and said, yeah, gingers don't have souls. Oh, I gotta go. And I never talked to that group of white folks again because I was like, oh, even in 6th grade, I didn't have the words. I didn't have the history, but I know that original formula. And I was like, if you don't think they got souls, you can just rearrange a couple of them letters. And now you don't think I got to get out of here. I got to go. So I don't know if there's a term for this. I'm sure somebody has studied it. If you look up one day in about 10 years and I make a feature-length film about white folks working through their whiteness and you're like, Jasmine, why would you do that? You a black woman. You got better things to do. You're right. But I'm also really interested in the things that they don't know how to unpack because they think they're the default setting and they're not. Right. And then thinking about the assimilation and the privilege of becoming this thing that ate your fucking history, that ate your fucking culture, this fucking creature that you are now assimilated into. I'm a girl that does cosmic horror. I'm a girl that does speculative fiction. This is fascinating to me. So you might see me working this thing and down the line, and I just don't want y'all to think that I'm turning my back on the culture or nothing. It's just, they don't have the tools to unpack this new racism plus, but I do. I know when I see it, and I thought I'd put y'all on. So there you go.
You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American. Yes, the torch of Lady Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage, the compact with our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors. It is that lady who gives us our great and special place in the world. For it's the great life force of each generation of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws the people of the world, no country on earth comes close. This, I believe, is one of the most important sources of America's greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams, we create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever closed the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost.
When the Irish came to America, they were not considered white. When my father's people came to America, they were not considered white. Yeah. But they are Southern European or Irish, because the Irish were treated poorly by the English. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's why they hate Catholics. Yeah. Protestants hate Catholics, and Catholics, why do they hate Catholics? I don't know. Couldn't explain it to you.
Father. All right, before I continue, this is from the movie Sinners.
I want your stories, and I want your songs, and you won't have mine.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Long ago, the man who stole my father's land forced these words upon us. I hated those men, but the words still bring me comfort.
My family wasn't white. My family was Italian. They were disparaged when they first came to America from Europe. My grandfather used to tell me terrible stories of what happened to him when he was a boy living in America as an Italian. They treated them the same way terribly racist people were treating people from Guatemala that sneak in here. It's the same kind of thing. Yeah. And then after a while, they sort of integrated, and now I'm white.
Yeah, now you're just a white person.
White nationalism is just not a good look. Who's going to tell white pride Barbie that the Italians weren't considered white when they came to the United States, and that that's Italian culture, not white culture? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant Americans considered Italians to be dirty, less intelligent, more criminal prone, and they were worried that these swarthy individuals would impose their inferior racial biology on the population. Groups like the KKK and other eugenicists persecuted Italians, and they were kept out of some schools, movie theaters, and labor unions because they weren't white, and they were Catholic. Moreover, the United States hasn't actually become more racially diverse. They have expanded the definition of what they consider is white. And the funniest part is the Trevi Fountain is actually an Italian depiction of Greek mythology. The Greeks weren't considered white either when they came here.
Laugh if you want to. Your hair is kinkier than mine. What does that mean? And you know what they say about dark Italian?
Asking my co-worker the truth about the hair color hierarchy.
What is the hair color hierarchy? I just found out about this the other day. What's the deal between the blonde people and the brown hair people, and then the red hair people, and then the real blonde people who don't think other blonde people are blonde because they're not as blonde as them?
Because our whole lives, we've been made fun of for being blonde and stupid, okay? And then brunettes are these uber smart people because they're born with boring poop color hair.
Okay.
And then the redheads, they're like evil, you know? Redheads
Why?
are literally evil. Their hair is red. They spawned from the devil himself. My niece has red hair, naturally.
What about
the devil?
Okay, I got a question. So my cousin, she's mixed.
Uh-huh.
She was born with super, when I say blonde, like blonde, super light hair. Her hair is ginger now, and it's curly.
She's getting evil. She's starting to become evil.
Okay, so now what's the deal with the people who think they're more blonde than you?
Because the more blonde you are, the more stupid you're said to be.
But they think from what I've gathered, the true blonde people are better than the dirty blonde people.
I am better than other people. Duh. Hello. Closer to Jesus.
Okay.
We should stop saying Eurocentric beauty standards because what y'all are actually referring to is the desire to be blonde and blue. And that's not Eurocentric. That is the Aryan ideal. You know why these white women are flipping out when they realize that they actually have brown hair and not blonde? It's because this is Eugen Fischer's hair gauge. He was a Nazi and he invented this in order to rank people's proximity to the Aryan ideal. And while white women are having an existential crisis over a hair color, black women still use the goddamn chart trying to figure out if it's 4A or 4B. When I am on this app telling people that everything in our culture is based on white supremacy, what the fuck is it that y'all think I'm trying to say?
Folks are so upset with my video where I said the only natural blondes in the world are children. I got so many comments like this and other comments of people posting their pictures of their natural blonde hair as adults. So many people talking about not where I come from, maybe in America, but not in Scandinavia, not in the Baltics. That doesn't change the point of what I said. We need to go back to learning how arguments work and the fact that exceptions still prove the argument. Just because you know one person doesn't mean that the whole entire argument is incorrect. Most estimates say that only 2% of adults are natural blondes. 2%. And y'all are clinging on to that 2% with your dear life. I think this is a moment for folks to unpack. Why are you so defensive about having blonde hair as an adult? Especially when we're talking about it in the context of blonde hair being the Eurocentric beauty standard. Like, I posited that question to ask about beauty standards that revolve around a child-like feature. Instead of folks being like, damn, I never thought about that. That's crazy. I have people in the comments like, no, look, my roots are, look, my roots. Also, someone posted a picture in my comments. I'm like, baby, that's Sandy Brown. That's not blonde, that's Sandy Brown. In conclusion, only about 2% of the world's population are natural blondes as adults. So I ask the question again. Does nobody think it's weird that blonde hair, which only occurs naturally in children, and 98% of children with blonde hair grow out of it by the time they hit adulthood, probably puberty? If it's a childhood trait, why is it considered so desirable when it comes to beauty standards?
Oh boy. Okay, let's get into blonde politics. So unfortunately, a lot of our beauty standards are very Eurocentric and based in racism and eugenics. There is a special kind of sauce when it comes to blonde hair, especially blonde hair and blue eyes. Because as a culture in America, blonde hair, blue eyes, or light eyes in general, fair skin, and at the moment anyway, a thin body are seen as like the beauty standard. Now, it's really common for people's hair to darken over time, regardless of color. Brown hair can get darker over time, and blonde hair can also get darker over time. So a lot of times, these white blonde children are growing up inundated with weird messaging from the adults around them. Because the average adult generally, but especially the average white adult, is not going to sit down and do the work to actively unpack, what exactly is like my beauty standard, my taste in people? Where did that come from? What do my feelings about my body and other people's body say about me and the culture that I've grown up in? What does that say about the cultural pressures that I'm experiencing? What does that say about the religious pressures that I'm experiencing? I grew up in a very white suburban area of the Bible Belt in Missouri. That put a special sauce on the way that adults were talking about me and my body and my hair. So you're getting all of these weird comments from the adults around you, possibly to the point where being blonde is part of your sense of self. It is part of who you are. It is part of how you see yourself. And it is part of what makes you feel good about yourself and your body and your hair. And then you get older. And as you get older, your hair darkens over time. And again, most people are not going to sit down and unpack their own beliefs and their own thoughts of, why is it so important to me fundamentally that I hold on to the label of blonde, whether or not the people around me actually still view me as blonde? And the result was that, like I expected, I got a lot of comments that sounded like, well, I know you said that I shouldn't comment because I was born blonde, but my hair is darker than yours and it's definitely blonde, so yours is blonde. Because mine has to be blonde. I don't trust that you actually have proper visual analysis skills in this specific area, because I don't think that you've worked through your stuff well enough. Some of you guys need to sit and work through your shit. Why is it so important to you that you are blonde? And I fear until then, I don't trust your judgment on my hair color. Also, the general consensus that I got is that there is not a general consensus and the internet is just as confused as I am. I'm going with mousy brown. Although the hair techs in my comments were saying that it looked like a level 7 blonde, which it does lighten like blonde hair, so that also makes sense to me. I guess the conclusion is I'm still confused, and I don't trust the average natural blonde about their opinion on this subject. I still don't. I'm sorry, but some of you just really got some unpacking to do. And I'm not including myself in this. Like, unlearning racism is a ongoing job that will continue throughout your life. This is maintenance work. It's like wiping your ass. It's not fun, but you do need to do it, and a lot of you are not doing the work, and it's pretty clear.
And this is all I wanted to say. But people didn't want to hear it. They got upset when I started talking about blonde hair. They got defensive.
I don't trust blondes neither, because Nazis in Rocky IV, and that little evil kid from Harry Potter, and that other little evil kid from Game of Thrones.
Okay, quick question number 3. If white women unpacked our trauma and fear and distrust and the values that we were raised with, the whiteness values we were raised with, and learned how to be kind to ourselves and form authentic, true community with other white women, how would that change the way that activism looks in this country? Hello, I'm Miriam. Welcome to the official start of my series, Unpacking Internalized Whiteness Values, I guess is what I'm calling it. Also, this is a puppy. And what we're going to talk about this week is hierarchy. So I'm going to pick like one aspect of whiteness hierarchies to talk about as we go through the week. And I picked this question because I think this is actually the most important one to talk about. And that is, why don't white women show empathy or caring for others? That is because on a whiteness hierarchy, empathy only goes up. A whiteness hierarchy is a lot like making alcohol. The good stuff goes up, the bad stuff collects in the bottom. It's a lot like distilling. And I just read a book about alcohol. So the way that this works is that everyone at your level and above on the hierarchy deserves empathy, kindness, compassion, the benefit of the doubt. And everyone below you on the hierarchy deserves apathy, anger, and even disgust. And I believe that's, this is actually something I believe is very common in white people around the world, because this, I think, is a legacy of colonialism. When colonialism first started, there was a concentrated effort to essentially kill the empathy for anyone below a certain level. So they found these people groups and they wanted to strip mine them. And in order to be able to do that, they had to essentially argue that these people are not worthy of our empathy and compassion. They're not worthy of human rights and dignity. And in doing so, they essentially invented our modern concept of racism. But they also invented an internalized mindset that a lot of white people still carry, which is that everyone below a certain point on your hierarchy doesn't deserve anything. And one really good example of this that isn't tied to like racism or kind of, well, I guess it's good tied to racism. One really good example of this that isn't specifically tied to racism or patriarchy or classism is the way that you see a lot of blue progressives talk about red states, right? So some blue progressives will be really, really vicious when a red state is going through a disaster, or when there's a really nasty piece of legislation that's going to hurt a lot of people. Some blue progressives will be like, oh, they deserve it. Oh, I hope they get wiped off the map. Like, and there's a bit of racism there if you look at the demographics of red states, at the very least functionally. There's a bit of classism there, again, if you look at the difference between red states and blue states in terms of like culture. But fundamentally, that reaction is anybody who's lower than us on the hierarchy of having good governance, anybody who's lower than us on the hierarchy of ideals doesn't deserve support. Regardless, I mean, never mind gerrymandering, never mind, like I said, never mind like the racial demographics of red states or the amazing work that they've been doing. They don't have the right governance, so they don't deserve support. And that's a fucked up way to move through the world. And it's really, really hindering in building community and for obvious reasons, but it's also really passive. It contributes a lot to the passivity of whiteness, which is something I think we're going to talk about more probably. Because if you don't feel any need to help the people below you, and you're always making excuses for the people above you, you have no reason to change anything. And so I think a lot of whiteness passivity can be attributed to this aspect of the hierarchy as well, which is that empathy only goes up. And of course, obviously, empathy only goes up from where you are at. And that just makes it even more infuriating, right? Because like white people who have deeply internalized this kind of hierarchy are like, everybody me and like me and above me deserves stuff and everybody below me doesn't. But they always draw the line at themselves, which leads to a pretty big lack of self-awareness, actually. So what do we do with that? Well, first of all, if you want to kind of test how deeply you've internalized this hierarchy, ask yourself, does everyone deserve to eat? Does every human being on the planet deserve to eat? And if your answer is no, ask yourself why. And then ask yourself, like, what is it about these people that makes them... Hello? Who are you fighting? Who are you hunting in your sleep? What is it about these people that makes me think they're not deserving of food. Who do you think is deserving of basic human rights? Dollars to donuts. If you're talking dollars to donuts, if you're talking about, we are hardcore dreaming. If you're talking to someone and they don't believe that everyone deserves to eat, 9 times out of 10, the people they don't think they deserve to eat are people that they feel are beneath them in some way. Because that's how it works. That's how that particular fucked up aspect of the hierarchy works. So everybody, empathy always goes to you, the people next to you, and everybody above you. And it doesn't go below. And that is something I think needs to be unpacked by a lot of people. So, all right, we will talk more. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And I'll see you later. I got a few minutes before the puppy wakes up and everything goes to hell. I have to make dinner. So, real quick. White Autistics. Huddle up. Everyone else can stay, but this is specifically for you. Thank you for being in my comments, first of all, and sharing your experiences. Not understanding hierarchy and being excluded is a really common autistic experience. It's a very valid one. I just need you guys to hear me when I say this, okay? Just because you did not fit into a system does not mean you did not internalize it, okay? Like, just because you didn't value the ideal at the top of the hierarchy you were in, or you couldn't make the ideal, or you didn't understand the system, doesn't mean that you won't try to recreate a hierarchy elsewhere of that nature with an ideal you do value. And it doesn't mean that someone who is using an ideal you value as bait won't draw you into that kind of dynamic. Okay? So we also need to unpack this. Not necessarily because we're actively using it, but because it can still be the lens through which we view life, even if we're not good at it. Okay, I have to go now, bye. Okay. I keep trying to do all these in one take. I should really stop doing that. It's been a week, but I'm back. I'm going to try and do 2 videos today and 2 videos tomorrow so that we can wrap up hierarchy and move on to conformity. But for those of you who just got here, I'm Miriam. I'm doing a series on internalized whiteness values, specifically as it pertains to the United States, and specifically as it pertains to white women and people raised in the white women box. I got this question, which is hierarchy unique to white culture? Don't all cultures have hierarchies? I love this question. I was hoping someone would ask it because you are correct. Hierarchy is a universal thing. Mostly, pretty much. I don't know enough to say if it's fully universal, but most, if not all, cultures have some kind of hierarchy. I got to watch this amazing video in an anthropology class that I took for shits and giggles, and it was about this guy in, I think, Papua New Guinea, and they followed him around for like a year, and his whole goal for the whole year was to amass more pigs than anyone had ever amassed to take to the pig festival at the end of this all. So it was just following him around as he made deals with people. He called in favors. He did all of this social rearranging. He had to figure out how to take care of the pigs as he started to collect them, where to keep them until he was ready to collect them. I think he ended up getting another wife to help take care of them. It was this whole big, very intricate process that at the end of it, the goal was for him to take more pigs to the pig festival than anyone had ever taken and become the big man in his area. So people have always been people. But there's a couple of things about the US white hierarchy that I think make it uniquely sticky and uniquely toxic. And one of them is the colonialist aspect, which I talk about in the hierarchy and empathy video. And that's basically the idea that everyone above you on the hierarchy deserves compassion and sympathy and rights and privacy, and the people below you don't deserve any of that. And I talk about that more over there. But the other thing I want to talk about that I think is really, really impactful, and we talk about it, but I want to do a deep dive, is the rootlessness of white Americans. So for those of you who don't know, this is pretty well established, like documented. For those of you who don't know, the history of immigration in this country is a lot of like potentially white people coming over, forming their communities, and then assimilating into the whiter culture, you know, giving up their language, letting go of their customs, a lot of their specific cultural traditions, so that they can be part of, like, be assimilated in and be part of the whiteness hierarchy and get security and stability. And so in essence, there was a process of becoming white in this country that required you to let go of a lot of the stuff that you had, a lot of the roots that you had before. And this is in contrast to what happened to the ancestors. I'm always making those words, flipping those words. The ancestors of Black Americans who were forced over here, whose roots were severed, and who were not offered any kind of stability, security, or power in exchange. So what Black Americans did is they built their own culture outside of the hierarchy, and they put down their own roots. And that's why African American, Black American culture in the US today is such a specific and vibrant and unique thing in the world, because they rebuilt it. Like, and then, you know, as kind of the world got a little smaller and globalization began to happen, like, a lot of Black Americans started to reach back and kind of figure out their African, like, roots as well. But they had that basis already. That's that stability of the culture that their people had built. So white Americans don't have that. All we have is the hierarchy. And there's another aspect to this that I really want to touch on, because people are like, well, go back and reclaim what they stole from you. I get that. But also I want to talk about an aspect that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is connection to the land. I saw this amazing video, and I actually reblogged it. Reposted it. It's in my reposts, and it was this Icelandic woman. She was talking about Vikings and braids, but she was talking about how one of her ancestors wrote this, like, really famous Icelandic saga, and that he wrote it about his ancestors, and it was going, she can trace her family lines back 30 generations. 30. If you, assuming a generation is 30 years, if your family came to the United States after it was founded as a country, you've got like 8 generations max. If you came over on the Mayflower, you get maybe like 13, 14, right? So, and that's not a lot. And I think we underestimate how big that lack is in the white American psyche. Because instead of being able to do what Black Americans did and forge a white American culture, we basically made the hierarchy our culture. Does that make sense? And this is, obviously there's a lot of nuance. It's a big ass country. I think the closest to the connection to the land that you come from is people like ranchers and farmers who've been on the same land for like 6 or 7 generations. Like that's probably the closest you can get to what it feels like to be European and be able to walk, or to be able to go somewhere and see the grave of an ancestor from 1,000 years ago, right? Like, our roots aren't here. Our bones aren't here. And I think it really, on a fundamental human level, is really disorienting. And it's not a problem that I'm sure how to fix. Now, and you can see us try to fix it. I mean, it's one of the reasons why if you talk to a white person and you're like, where do you come from? And they're like, they start giving you percentages. Like, I'm this much Scottish and I'm this much German and I'm this much Dutch or whatever. That's our attempt to find that rootedness. But a lot of us are never going to be able to trace our family trees back. And a lot of us are never going to be able to afford to go over to the places that we came from and try and find that connection. And so what we do, I think, is we form connections, really strong connections to the subcultures that we're in. People form really strong connections to their cities. It's one of the reasons when you talk to someone from the US and you ask them where they're from, they don't say from the US. It's because their connection isn't in the United States as a country. It's in this specific place. It's in New York, Chicago. It's in Atlanta. It's in Nebraska. We try to rebuild our subcultures. I think we try to rebuild our subcultures sometimes as a substitute for that connection or an attempt to regrow that connection. But because we're still doing it in hierarchy, it's inherently unstable. Does that make any sense? So I think one of the things that we really need to keep in mind going forward, specifically as we learn to be in community with each other as white women and women in the white women box, is that a lot of times if someone is clinging to the hierarchy, it's because they don't have any other footing or they don't feel like they have any other footing. And so I think one of our challenges as white women in the US is to learn to feel solid in ourselves and to help other people feel solid in themselves, whatever that might look like. Does that make sense? I'm kind of rambling at this point. Let me know what you guys think.